Welcome to Take It from the Ironwoman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Ironwoman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Ironwoman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Ironwoman. After more than 250 episodes, we're still going very strong with special guests, with people that we find virtually. And certainly today, Tom Clare is one of those. We share two things, at least in common. We are professors at New York University and also the passion for marathon running. Welcome, Tom, and introduce yourself. Who is Tom who's going to join us today?
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. My name's Tom Clare. As Suzanne just said, I'm a professor at NYU's SPS, School for Professional Studies, where I teach copy editing and proofreading books. I've also taught classes there on English grammar, which is, for me, a lot of fun. Every copy editor has to be a grammarian by nature. Every grammarian does not have to be a copy editor by nature. That's for darn sure, which is why you have errors in grammatical books and grammar books. More than 10 years ago, my wife challenged me to a simple turkey trot one Thanksgiving day. It took me an hour. I was like 240 pounds. I was way overweight. I was overworked. I was an ex-smoker. At least I'd stopped smoking. I was smart enough to do that. I had a long commute. I had a hard job. And I was out of shape. And it was a midlife wake up. As a joke, my buddy Henry said to me, why don't you apply to the New York City Marathon? If you're serious about getting in, at that time, now this is no longer the New York Roadrunners don't do that. If you applied 3 years in a row and didn't get accepted, you were automatically in the fourth year. Henry said to me, apply now. And by the time you're ready to run it, I applied, and on the application said, hey, have you ever run a road race? I wrote 2005 Turkey Trot, and son of a gun, in 2006, I was accepted right off the bat. I was accepted to run a New York City Marathon. Whoa, hang on here. I have to start doing some serious running. I plowed in. I'm preparing for that race, and then having from June until November to prepare for the marathon, I was able to complete the marathon. I did it in just less than 5 hours, 2006. They accepted me again in 2007. Meanwhile, in 2006, because I had run that one marathon, and in the spring of 2007, I was studying French at the time. They said, well, let's treat ourselves to a trip to Paris. And I applied to run in the Paris Marathon in April. It became a marathon in the fall, and then in the spring, and then a half marathon here, a half marathon there to complement and stay in shape. So I ran New York City again, 2006, 2007. I didn't make it in 2008. So in the fall that year, I applied to Hartford, which runs 2 weeks in front of New York City. It runs in mid-October. Then next year, I ran Hartford. Then in 2011, I made New York again. I've run like 13 full marathons, Paris 3 times, Madrid. Studying Spanish now gives me the chance of practicing my Spanish in a native language, a native environment. I ran Toronto 1 year, the spring full marathon. It was the only marathon I've ever run, rain from beginning to end. It would have been a beautiful marathon. It would have been a beautiful run, except that it was raining from the start. I had surgery a couple of years ago. It was just at the beginning. It was the onset of the pandemic. I was one of those very lucky people, if I can be a little sardonic here, whose surgery was put off because of the onrush and need for the beds in the hospitals in New York. It was planned surgery, a New York Presbyterian Columbia Medical, and it got put off because of the pandemic. And then I had to force the issue because it was life-threatening. I don't mind putting it off for a couple of months, but there's a certain cancer here that has to be taken care of. That was May of it was a year and a half ago. I didn't do anything for 6 months. If somebody told me a joke, laughing hurt. It was terrible. It was no fun at all. Now I'm rehabbing on a Peloton, and it's the best rehab ever. It's easy on the knees. You can pace yourself. And this weather was like 27 degrees this morning here in Connecticut. It would have been at least one pair of pants and probably 2 tops and a pair of gloves and a cap. On a bicycle, no, you just go downstairs and plug in, baby. That's it. So.
Before we started to record, you showed me all your medals, and they're on a Mozart bust. We know Mozart, actually, they say you should listen to Mozart when you want to be creative in writing, and it also has some elements of math. I'm wondering, how come you put all the medals there? But what I'm more interested in is like, what do you think when you run the marathon or when you train for a marathon?
Those are some good questions. First off, the reason I have the Mozart bust for these medallions is simply because a friend of mine had this bust and said, here, take this bust. My wife picked it up just for a bookshelf. When I'm running, I don't listen to I don't have anything in my ears. I'm listening to my thoughts. Basically, it's a really good question, Suzanne. I think when I'm running, occasionally a song will come in that has a driving beat that will help me, will get me back on target. Like Johnny Cash's "I Hear the Train a Comin'." Those are nice songs to keep your rhythm up, etc. But I find that apart from nature, and believe me, I'm a birder. I've been a birder before I was a runner. I tend to not so much think about music, but I tend to have certain thought patterns when I'm running for practice, because I set myself certain goals. If I'm running, let's say I'm running 15, 16 miles as practice, some of that practice will be sprinting, not sprinting Isaiah Bolt by any means, but I'll say to myself, okay, the next 2 lampposts, I'm going to run X rate, and then I'll recover. And then I'll run the next 2. And so I'll do this for 10 minutes or so, just to vary my pace. Same thing with hills, up and down. Some hills take at a normal, you just plod up. Some hills you approach and you go up fast as practice, just to keep the variety.
If you think over your career, and if we have listeners who want to start to run and who want to start the marathon, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, okay. Interesting. My first take, and I've said this to people before, I hope it doesn't sound glib. We are creatures of habit, and it's really true. Good habits are bad. We are creatures of habit. Once we start something, and if you do it the same time every day, or relatively around the same time every day, it is self-reinforcing, and it's quickly self-reinforcing. In running, is you just don't go out and start running. You go out and you maybe run a half a lap or something. You're just practicing you're practicing tying up your running shoes is what you're doing. But I'm a strong believer, a huge believer in doing everything exactly the same amount for a week. If you're a starting athlete, for example, if you do 5 push-ups, 5 sit-ups, 5 jumping jacks, 5 whatever, okay. If you do 5 of whatever amount for 7 days in a row, the first 2 days you're gonna feel achy. The third day you're not gonna feel so achy. The fourth day, you don't feel achy at all. And the 5 things that you're doing repetitiously become easy to do. By the end of the 7 days, you can knock off those 5, whatever, like they were nothing. Then you incrementally increase that amount, but do that for exactly 7 days. So that you're doing 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, 10 whatever jacks. By the end, the first couple of days, once you up the amount, the first couple of days, you might feel tight. You have some aches, etc. Within like 4 days, you're over the aches. You've mastered. By the 7th day, it's like a piece of cake. And the same thing with running. You start off, you're going to do a half mile. You do a half mile every day and nothing more. You don't get yourself so achy or hurt that you don't want to go back and do it again. The first couple of days, you might feel a little, but then you will figure it out. And as you extend your distances, a week by week basis, jump it up, you will learn what your weak spots are. Start slow, keep it slow. Don't outdo yourself so that you hurt yourself and stop.
How many shoes do you own?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Running shoes, I generally get about 400 miles out of them, and that's it. They don't last long. Believe me, if I'm on the street, if I'm running 13 miles a day, let's say if I'm prepping for a half or a full marathon and I'm putting some serious time in, they don't last long. Right now, I was using Mizuno's. I started off with Adidas long ago. Then I went to Saucony, and I liked Saucony had a model that I liked. Then they stopped that line. Then I moved over. I liked Mizuno's. So I tried the Mizuno shoes, and I liked them. If you're running up a curve, let's say you're going up a steep hill, and the steep hill curves to the left or to the right. If you run to the inside, everybody knows if you run to the inside of whatever the course is, you will ultimately take fewer steps over the long haul. Sure, if you run to the inside, you're always going to take fewer steps than if you run wide. You're going to increase your mileage. You could actually increase on a half marathon. You could actually run an entire extra mile if you ran wide. So you're not going to do that. You're going to hug to the center or to the inside. But when you're running up a hill on a bend, if you don't hug the inside, if you move to the outside, you will take more steps, but the grade will be easier. And you're running into a wind, duck behind some bigger fellow in front of you until the course changes and you're no longer running into the wind. That guy take the wind and you just tail him for a little while. It's not you save a little energy, and why not? You're in competition. You want to do well. Then you've got extra energy to plug in later. So
you give like good advice if you're a smaller person that you are behind a taller guy, except me, when you are at the finish line, you don't want to be behind the taller person because then the pictures don't come out nice.
That's true. And by the way, and I've said this to people, other people don't feel the same way I do, but when I'm running, a lot of times you'll see little kids, little people along the side. Their parents are there actually to, root us on, but they bring their children. They're going to pay a babysitter so they can do this. So the kids are there and they have their hand out, and I love slapping their hands on the way by. And for some reason, it energizes me. Now, I know people who say, no, it doesn't do a thing. They don't bother. They don't do that. But I love dropping my right hand down if I'm if they're on the right side, or left hand if I'm on the other side of the street, and slapping those little hands on the way by. It fills me up with something. It's like running. It's like New York City Marathon. When you finally get across that 59th Street Bridge, and that bridge goes forever. It's a mile and a quarter or whatever. Now they call it the Ed Koch Bridge, or it used to be called Queensboro. But that bridge is, when you're running it, it's forever. The wind comes off the river. It's always from one side or the other. You freeze. You're basically at the halfway point. It's a pisser of a bridge. I'll say that. On First Avenue, it's 5 people deep on each side for a mile and a half. First Avenue in the New York City Marathon, and there are 10,000 people cheering. Whoa, that's a feeling. The first time I ran New York, I didn't know if I could actually run a full marathon. And I'm running down Fifth Avenue. We're talking the 25th, 24th mile. I was close to I've never given anything up in my life. I've never called it quits. Tears were running down my face. I mean, I was in bad shape. It was I was probably 4.5 hours into it. Turned into the park. Oh, wow. I know this park. I've been here before. I've run this. I know these hills, these little slopes. And I felt great again. And I had a bandana on to control my sweat. So it was American flag bandana. It rolled up in a coil, but you could still see red, white, and blue. Anyways, everybody's Vive la France, because so many of these guys had running shorts, or Vive la France, Vive, all these Americans, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, this one babe says to me, "Hey, bandana, don't quit now." And it was the best thing ever. It was out of the blue. And of course, you're already past her when you hear it. So your hand goes up and you're waving so that that person knows that you heard that, so you're,
yeah.
It's fun. It's a lot. Now you're making me, you forget how hard it is. And then you look back on it, and it's like, oh, wow, I had a lot of fun, didn't I? And the other thing is, I went from a size, my suit pants, I think were 37 waists. I went over to Lord & Taylor, whatever, bought a couple of suits, had them tailored there and bring them back. And sure enough, by the time I actually got to the marathon, I had already lost a whole bunch of weight. I lost more weight, and I had to take the pants back in to be taken in. It's such good health. It's such a good, healthy thing to do. Wow. Running. Yeah.
Running. Thank you so much. Let's finish on this high note with a lot of good stories, a lot of fun, right? But also a lot of work. Thank you so much, Tom, for all your insights.
Okay. Thanks, Suzanne, for everything, and happy running to everybody, and a happy New Year.
Always nice to talk to a fellow marathon runner. I think in 2007, we ran the marathon together, but obviously with 20, 30, or even 50,000 people, who knows where he was, who knows where I was. Many great memories to share. Take it from the Ironwoman. We have episodes every Monday, every Wednesday. Don't miss out. There is something for everybody. Thank you for all your support. We keep going. with more than 250 episodes. Thank you so much. Be well, be safe, be healthy, keep running.